Have you ever spent, like, days or maybe even weeks crafting the absolute perfect presentation?
Oh, yeah. You know the exact scenario.
Right, the slide deck is totally flawless, your data is comprehensive, the logic is airtight, the charts are all beautifully color-coded.
And you walk into that boardroom feeling completely invincible.
Yes, you feel untouchable.
Nah.
And then, you start talking, and you just watch your audience's eyes completely glaze over within, like, the first 5 minutes.
It is a very specific, agonizing kind of pain.
It really is.
You can physically feel the energy just drain right out of the room. And honestly, there is almost nothing you can do to get it back once it's gone.
Exactly. You're standing there thinking, I mean, the numbers are right here on the screen. The ROI is undeniable. Why aren't you getting this?
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
Well, today's deep dive is going to explain exactly why that happens. But more importantly, we are going to explore how to never let it happen again.
Right, because there is a science to fixing this.
Absolutely. We are looking at a stack of material centered around Oren Klaff's book, Pitch Anything. And Klaff is a high-stakes investment banker who has personally raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion.
Which is just a staggering amount of money.
Insane, right. So our mission today is to really unpack his systematic, neuroscience-based method for persuasion. We're going to figure out why most rational presentations completely fail.
And how you can master the invisible power dynamics of literally any room you walk into.
Yes. So let's just jump right in. Where does this all start?
Well, it all starts with what Klaff identifies as the fundamental disconnect. This is the biological reality right at the core of his entire methodology.
Wait, a biological reality. Break that down for us.
So when we design a pitch, we naturally use the modern, highly analytical part of our brains, the neocortex. We sit at our desks, we put together spreadsheets, analyze market trends, build these complex logical arguments.
Right, because that's what makes sense to us when we're preparing.
Exactly. But the fundamental disconnect is that your audience is not receiving your pitch with their neocortex.
Wait, really? What are they using then?
They are receiving it with the most primitive, emotion-driven part of their brain, which the material refers to as the croc brain, or the crocodile brain.
The crocodile brain. I want to spend some time on this biological reality because, once you understand the mechanics of what is physically happening in the listener's head,
It changes everything.
it totally changes everything about how we should communicate. So what is this croc brain actually doing?
Think of the croc brain as the ultimate involuntary gatekeeper of human attention. Evolutionarily speaking, it is millions of years old. It's incredibly fast at processing information, but it's highly attuned to danger.
So it's basically just looking out for threats.
Exactly. And it is fiercely selfish. Because its primary job is basic survival, it really only cares about one immediate question, which is, what's in it for me?
Just a raw survival instinct.
Yeah, it reacts to new information and filters it out before the rational neocortex even has a chance to boot up.
Wow. So if you don't appeal to that primal croc brain first, your message just gets completely discarded.
It never even reaches the analytical centers of their brain.
I was trying to think of a way to visualize this mechanism.
Yeah.
It's basically like trying to send a massive multi-gigabyte ZIP file of complex spreadsheets to, like, a vintage early 2000s flip phone.
Oh, that is a perfect way to put it.
Right. The hardware of that flip phone just fundamentally rejects the file because it lacks the processing power to even know what to do with it.
Yeah, the hardware just fails.
That flip phone is only looking for a very simple text message that basically says, is this good for me or is this bad for me?
That analogy hits the nail on the head, especially when you talk about processing power. Because the neocortex is that high-powered computer, but it is slow. And running it actually consumes a massive amount of the body's glucose.
So it literally takes physical energy to process complex data.
Exactly. The croc brain's evolutionary imperative is to conserve energy unless it is absolutely necessary to burn it. So, the neocortex's primary job isn't actually to make the initial decision.
Well, it's not.
No.
Fine.
Its job is to rationalize the decision after the croc brain has already made it. People fall in love with ideas emotionally first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and only after that emotional attachment is formed do they look for the logic to justify what their gut already wants.
Which completely flips the script on how modern business operates. I mean, we are taught to always lead with the logic, lead with the data.
Right, which just drains their energy.
So to bypass that flip phone filter, the methodology says you have to do 3 specific things right out of the gate. First, you must trigger a positive emotion. Second, you absolutely must avoid triggering fear or danger alarms.
Also.
And third, you have to introduce something highly novel, because the croc brain pays attention to pleasant surprises.
Yeah, precisely. If you bore the croc brain, it ignores you to conserve energy. But if you threaten it with too much complexity, like an avalanche of data, it perceives that cognitive load as an actual threat.
And it actively shuts you down.
It completely tunes you out.
So if my massive ZIP file of data is being rejected by their flip phone croc brain, I can't just talk louder or, point harder at the spreadsheet.
No, that just makes it worse.
Right, I have to change the entire psychological environment of the conversation.
Uh,
Which kind of brings us to how we actually communicate with the croc brain, using what Klaff calls the frame.
Yeah, this is where we get into the actual mechanics of power dynamics. So a frame is essentially the invisible mental filter through which all human influence and perception happens.
So it's like the underlying context of the interaction.
Exactly. It dictates how a person views the world and how they expect the world to view them. And when two people meet, their frames invariably collide, they compete.
And the winning frame basically controls the agenda, right? It dictates the pace and the outcome of the entire meeting.
Completely. If your frame loses that initial collision, you are stuck in a reactive position for the rest of the time, just playing by someone else's rules.
Which is a terrible place to pitch from.
The worst.
So, the material breaks down 5 specific competing frames you will encounter out in the wild and how to biologically counter them. Let's start with the big one.
Right. The most common barrier is the power frame. You see this all the time. This is usually held by someone who is deeply accustomed to being in control. They might be arrogant, dismissive, or just highly commanding.
The classic alpha executive.
Exactly. And to counter this, you cannot submit, because submission signals to their croc brain that you are weak and simply not worth their time.
You just become invisible to them.
Yes. You have to use what Klaff calls a power frame disruptor. This is a small, calculated act of defiance that basically tells their croc brain you aren't playing by their rules.
Okay, give me an example of that.
So, for example, if you're presenting and the target starts aggressively leafing through your visual materials ahead of time, ignoring you, you physically take the visuals out of their hands and casually say, well, not until I say so.
Okay, hold on. I have to throw a massive red flag on this specific tactic.
I thought you might.
I mean, taking away a visual from a VIP, telling a CEO or some major investor, not until I say so. On paper, that sounds incredibly arrogant. Doesn't doing something like that just make you look like a total jerk?
It's a fair question.
Like, how do you do this without getting immediately escorted out of the building by security?
It is a critical distinction to make, and it's honestly where a lot of people misinterpret frame control. The absolute secret ingredient to any frame disruption, and you have to remember this, is humor.
Humor, okay.
It must be lighthearted, playful, and delivered with a genuine smile. Without humor, defiance is just arrogance. And arrogance will immediately trigger their brain's danger alarm, which just causes them to attack or dismiss you.
Ah, so it triggers the threat response.
Exactly. But with humor, it demonstrates immense relaxed confidence. The croc brain intrinsically respects that kind of confident status flex.
So it's about showing that you aren't intimidated, but doing it in a way that is, like, charming rather than aggressive.
Exactly. It's playful dominance.
That makes a lot more sense. But what happens when the resistance isn't arrogant, but just, incredibly dry? I'm thinking of the people who just want to bury you in spreadsheets and kill all the emotional momentum, the analyst frame.
Oh, the analyst frame is actually super dangerous because it forces the room into cold, calculating cognition. When someone starts drilling you on, minor financial discrepancies in year 4 of your projection.
Right, the super deep in the weeds questions.
Yeah, they are waking up everyone's neocortex and basically putting the croc brain back to sleep. You have to separate the math from the vision.
So how do you do that?
You answer their technical question competently, but as briefly as absolutely possible, and then you immediately pivot to the intrigue frame.
Now, the intrigue frame is fascinating because of how it essentially hacks human attention.
It really does.
This is what you deploy when the room is getting bored or way too analytical. You basically tell a brief, high-tension personal story that's somewhat related to your pitch. You position yourself as the protagonist facing serious consequences.
Yes, high stakes.
But the biological trick is, and I love this, you leave the story unresolved.
That's so effective.
You stop right at the absolute most suspenseful part, and you just pivot straight back to the pitch. It forces their croc brain to stay razor sharp because human psychology is just utterly desperate for narrative resolution.
It creates an open loop. It physically yanks them right out of the cold cognition and plunges them back into hot emotional engagement. They literally can't stop paying attention because they need to know what happened.
That is brilliant. Okay, what's next?
Another aggressive tactic you'll face is the time frame. This is a classic power assertion. You walk into a meeting you booked for an hour. The target looks at their watch and says, "Look, I only have 15 minutes."
Oh, I've had that happen. And the instinct for most people is just to crumble. They apologize. They say, "Oh, thank you so much for your time. I'll talk really fast."
Which is the worst thing you can do.
Right, because biologically, that signals massive low status. So instead of speeding up, you counter it by shrinking the time frame even further. You look at your watch and say, "You know what, that's fine. I actually only have 14 minutes.
Exactly. It completely strips them of the dominant power position they were trying to assert. It signals that your time is just as valuable, if not more so.
It's such a subtle but powerful flip.
And that leads directly into the prize frame. Instead of acting like you are desperate to win their money or their approval, you position yourself as the reward. You actively make them qualify themselves to you.
So you make them piss you, basically.
Pretty much. You might ask something like, we're considering a lot of capital partners right now. Why should I consider partnering with your firm?
It's all about completely flipping the dynamic. But we need to elevate this conversation beyond just the verbal tactics.
Sure.
Because these frames aren't just things you say. They are fully baked into the physical environment. They are these unspoken social rituals you encounter before you even open your mouth.
We have to talk about the status game.
Status is everything. It's the silent language of the croc brain. You simply cannot persuade someone from a position of lower status. They are biologically programmed to just ignore you.
But you can't just magically make yourself a billionaire before a meeting.
Right. You might not be able to change your global status, your overall wealth, or your industry reputation the moment you walk into a room.
Yeah.
But you can seize what the methodology calls situational status or local star power for the duration of that specific meeting.
And to capture that situational status, you have to be deeply aware of what they call beta traps.
Yes, these are everywhere.
I was so fascinated by this concept because it explains so much about modern corporate culture. Beta traps are these subtle, structural business rituals designed entirely to make you subconsciously submit to your target's alpha status.
They are completely by design. It's like being told by security to sign in at a front desk and wear a specific visitor badge. It's being told to sit in a specific uncomfortable chair in a lobby while the other party deliberately makes you wait 20 minutes past the meeting time.
Or engaging in that nervous, subservient small talk about the traffic just to seek their social approval.
Exactly. Every time you blindly follow these physical protocols, you're basically signaling to their croc brain that you are a subordinate.
You're handing them the power frame on a silver platter.
It really reminds me of walking into a major casino in Las Vegas.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison. How so?
Well, every single architectural detail in a casino, from the dizzying, confusing pattern on the carpet to the complete lack of clocks on the walls, is a physical beta trap. It's all designed to disorient you and subtly force you to play by the house's rules.
That is exactly what it is.
Corporate lobbies and executive suites are designed exactly the same way. They are literally architectures of intimidation.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. And the sources specifically warn against falling into certain character archetypes because of these architectural traps. You absolutely do not want to be the beta.
The beta being like the needy pitcher.
Right. The person who relies entirely on rule following, punctuality, and constant approval seeking to get by. Because neediness fundamentally kills deals. The croc brain senses desperation like a predator senses fear.
It just smells blood in the water.
Exactly. And conversely, you don't want to be the data dumper, the person who ignores the status game entirely and relies solely on logic, pitching exclusively to the neocortex.
So how do you avoid these traps?
You have to professionally defy them. If they tell you to sit in a specific lobby chair, don't. Stand and lean comfortably against a wall instead. Control your physical space. Break the ritual.
Okay, so we are visualizing this. We've established our situational status. We've dodged the beta traps in the lobby. We've confidently walked into the boardroom. And we are perfectly positioned to bypass their neocortex.
The stage is set.
Right. So what do we actually say? How do we structure the pitch itself? The sources outline a highly specific 20-minute blueprint called the STRONG method.
Yes. STRONG is an acronym. It stands for set the frame, tell the story, reveal the intrigue, offer the prize, nail the hook point, and get a decision.
This very clear roadmap.
It is. But what is really crucial here is Klaff's incredibly strict adherence to a 20-minute limit for the entire pitch.
Just 20 minutes. That feels so short.
There is a profound biological reason for this. The human brain simply cannot maintain high levels of focused attention much longer than 20 minutes without severe cognitive fatigue.
Because of the glucose burn we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Once you cross that 20-minute threshold, the croc brain literally starts shutting down the intake valve to stop burning glucose. They stop listening, physically.
Wow. So we have a hard 20-minute timer. Let's look at the actual journey of those 20 minutes, because you don't just dump information. You guide them psychologically.
It's very structured.
The first 5 minutes are for your intro and the big idea. But you don't bore them with your 15-year resume. You focus on a track record of 1 or 2 massive, undeniable hits to establish immediate authority.
Keep it punchy.
Yeah. Then you use a very tight 1-minute formula for your big idea. It basically goes, for this specific target audience who are dissatisfied with the current market, my idea is a new category that provides this key benefit, unlike the competition.
It's the perfect elevator pitch.
It is, and you frame the whole thing around the question of why now.
Addressing that why now is so vital because it triggers the croc brain's survival instinct, specifically the fear of missing out on a massive environmental shift.
You want them feeling that urgency.
Exactly. You explain the economic, social, or technological forces that make this idea incredibly urgent today. It creates a sense of motion and undeniable novelty.
Okay, then for the next 10 minutes, you move to the budget and the secret sauce. And this part is fascinating. You address the budget directly. You don't hide from the numbers.
You have to prove you understand the reality.
Right. You talk about how hard it is for competitors to enter the market and how hard it is for customers to switch away from you. But then you reveal your secret sauce, your ultimate unfair advantage, and you immediately move on.
You do not linger on it.
Yes, and I was thinking about why this works so well. If you linger on the intricate details of your secret sauce, you inevitably wake up the cold, analytical neocortex.
That's exactly the trap.
But by revealing it as a massive competitive advantage and then quickly moving on, you keep the croc brain entirely hooked on the novelty and the intrigue.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. You give them just enough to realize you have something incredibly valuable, but not enough to trigger a deep analytical breakdown in that moment.
It's such a tease, but it works.
It totally works. Following that, you spend just 2 minutes offering the actual deal. You explain with absolute clarity what you will deliver and exactly what they must do in return. No ambiguity.
Just laying it all out. And this brings us to the final 3 minutes, the climax of the pitch, which is entirely about creating what the methodology calls hot cognition.
This is the grand finale.
Yeah. You rapidly stack frames, you hit them with an intrigue frame, you pivot to a prize frame, you throw down a time constraint frame, and you finish with a moral authority frame, basically claiming the ethical high ground.
It is a rapid-fire sequence designed to generate massive emotional engagement.
It sounds incredibly intense, but honestly, I have to stop here and push back on the practicality of this whole 20-minute thing.
Hear it.
A 20-minute time limit seems insanely, almost dangerously short for a massive deal.
Yeah.
Are we really expecting, like, a Fortune 500 CEO or a venture capitalist to make a multi-million-dollar financial decision based purely on hot cognition without giving their analytical brain the time to actually crunch the numbers and run risk models?
It's a really valid concern, and it's honestly the most important distinction in the entire process. We have to clearly separate hot cognition from cold cognition.
Okay, define those for us.
Hot cognition is the visceral, emotional desire for something before you fully understand all the underlying mechanics of it. Cold cognition is the rational, spreadsheet-driven analysis.
So we aren't throwing out the spreadsheets entirely.
Not at all. The methodology is not saying you avoid cold cognition entirely. The spreadsheets still absolutely matter. What it's saying is that you must ensure hot cognition happens inside the room during the pitch.
Ah, I see.
The deep analytical dive, the due diligence, the rigorous math, that all happens later outside the room, driven by their analyst teams. But, and this is the key, they will only authorize that deep dive if their croc brain already deeply desires the deal.
Oh, wow. So if you don't achieve hot cognition in those 20 minutes, the cold cognition phase never even happens.
Exactly. You are essentially just winning the right to the spreadsheet phase.
That reframes the entire goal of a pitch. You aren't closing the financial mechanics right then and there. You are closing the emotional desire.
Exactly. You're selling the vision.
But let's do a reality check on all of this. Because while this sounds like an absolute superpower, we need to look critically at the source material for a second.
Always a good idea.
There is a glaring meta-mystery here that some reviewers of the book pointed out. Klaff is a billionaire-level deal maker. He manages vast amounts of capital.
Highly successful guy.
Right. So if this methodology is his ultimate secret weapon, his distinct competitive advantage in these cutthroat markets, why on earth would he write a book detailing his exact tactical playbook for all of his competitors to read?
It is a fascinating strategic question, and analysts have definitely debated his motivations. Some look at the publication of the book itself as the ultimate execution of the prize frame on a global scale.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, by publishing his methods, he positions himself not just as a banker looking for capital, but as the undisputed global authority on persuasion and deal-making.
So it's basically a massive marketing tool.
It establishes an impenetrable layer of global status before he even walks into a room. People now come to him already assuming he is the prize.
It's a localized status flex projected to the entire industry. That is incredibly smart.
Exactly. Now, regarding the practical application of this for the rest of us, many reviewers have noted that the tone of the book is exceptionally aggressive.
I can imagine.
It is built for the absolute highest stakes of Wall Street. And critics rightly ask if, an entry-level employee can really pull a time frame trick on their CEO, telling them they only have 14 minutes without getting immediately fired.
Right, because the power dynamics of pitching a startup to a VC are very, very different from pitching like a modest marketing budget to your department head.
They are completely different. You absolutely have to read the room and calibrate. If you are a junior employee pitching your CEO, you might need to heavily dial down the situational arrogance.
You probably shouldn't snatch a visual document out of your boss's hand.
Definitely do not do that. But the underlying neuroscience remains completely undeniable.
The croc brain is still the croc brain.
Exactly. Whether you are selling a multinational company or you are just pitching a new software tool to your manager, your boss's croc brain is still the ultimate gatekeeper of their attention.
They are still filtering for threats, novelty, and what's in it for me.
Right. You can adapt the intensity of the frame control without abandoning the core science of it.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? The core takeaway from diving into this material is a complete paradigm shift in how you prepare for your next big meeting.
It really is a total shift.
You have to stop spending weeks polishing data for the neocortex. You have to learn to recognize and control the underlying frame of the conversation. You need to identify and physically sidestep those subtle beta traps in the lobby.
Stand up, don't sit.
Exactly. Eradicate any subconscious signals of neediness. And keep your actual pitch incredibly tight to avoid cognitive fatigue. Stack those frames to generate that hot cognition, that deep emotional desire, before you ever bust out the pie charts.
I think the most powerful practical thing you can do before your next presentation is to look at your slide deck, really look at it critically, and ask yourself honestly, am I speaking to the spreadsheet or am I speaking to the crocodile?
That is the ultimate question.
Because if you are only speaking to the spreadsheet, you have already lost the room before you've even cleared your throat.
It fundamentally changes the way you look at a PowerPoint deck.
It really does. And I want to leave you with one final, broader thought to ponder as we wrap this deep dive up.
Sure, lay it on us.
We've talked extensively about how our primitive croc brain is fundamentally designed to keep us safe by avoiding complex danger and seeking immediate emotional rewards.
Right.
If that is true, is our modern corporate world's total obsession with purely logical, data-driven communication actually a massive form of evolutionary denial?
Oh, wow.
Are we all just putting on suits and pretending to be these hyper-rational data-processing creatures in the boardroom when, secretly, the entire global economy is still running entirely on primal jungle survival instincts?
That is wild to think about. It really makes you rethink every corporate meeting you've ever sat through.
Just a bunch of crocodiles in suits.
Yeah, exactly. So the next time you spend weeks crafting that flawless presentation and you start to see those eyes glazing over in the first 5 minutes, you'll know exactly which part of their brain is rejecting you.
And exactly how to wake the crocodile back up.